Logan Pierce stood in front of the expansive glass windows of his office, watching the city of San Francisco bustle beneath him. His company, a fast-growing tech startup, was on the brink of a breakthrough or a collapse. Stress weighed heavily on his shoulders, and yet, in this moment, the weight felt like it might crumble his resolve. "Logan," his assistant called from behind him. "She's here." Avery Holt, the woman who was supposed to solve his problems. Logan turned around, barely masking his skepticism. He had read the reports, seen the credentials. A deaf woman, brought in to help manage team dynamics and improve communication. It sounded like a PR stunt, a solution that might work in a perfect world but not in the high-stakes, fast-moving environment of Silicon Valley. He glanced at his watch. 9 a.m. on the dot. She was punctual. He had to give her that. The door to his office creaked open. Avery stepped inside with quiet confidence, her long dark hair tied back into a neat ponytail. Her eyes locked onto Logan's as she entered, and he couldn't help but notice the subtle firmness in her stance. She had the presence of someone who belonged, despite the doubts he harbored. "Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice calm, her words measured. Her hand raised slightly, a silent greeting, before she adjusted the small device in her ear, a tool that helped her hear better. He nodded back, unsure how to react. "Miss Holt," Logan responded, trying to mask his discomfort. "You're here to fix my team's communication problems. Can you do that?" Avery didn't flinch. She smiled, but it wasn't a forced smile, just one of quiet self-assurance. "I can do more than fix problems. I can help you build a team that functions without the constant friction." Her words were slow but deliberate, a marked contrast to the fast-talking, assertive Silicon Valley ethos Logan was used to. Logan raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "And how do you propose we do that?" Avery took a step forward, her presence commanding attention. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she pulled out a whiteboard from the side of the room and set it up with swift precision. Logan couldn't help but notice the way she handled the equipment, efficiently, without hesitation, her movements precise. She grabbed a marker and started writing down a few basic principles: emotional intelligence, nonverbal cues, trust building. "Communication is not just about words," Avery explained, her voice unwavering. "It's about understanding each other on a deeper level. Most people talk without listening. They speak their minds without hearing their coworkers." Logan was taken aback by her boldness, but his mind lingered on the words she wrote. He had been running this company based on quick decisions and high-pressure performance. He didn't have time for understanding and listening. It felt like a waste of time. "Fine," he said, his tone still uncertain. "But the clock's ticking. We don't have time for workshops. We need results." Avery met his gaze head-on. Results don't come from shouting louder. They come from listening, from building relationships, and from people understanding each other in ways they never have before. She paused, letting the words settle. "I can help you get the results you need, but it starts with trust." Logan couldn't deny that her confidence was striking, but he was still unconvinced. There was something about her, an unspoken energy that made him want to take her seriously, despite his reservations. "All right, Miss Holt," Logan said, his voice firm, though a flicker of doubt remained in his chest. "Let's see if you can really change things around. I'll give you the next month. Impress me." Avery gave him a small, knowing smile. "I don't plan to impress you, Mr. Pierce. I plan to make a difference." As she turned to leave, Logan's eyes lingered on her for a moment longer. He wasn't sure if it was her determination or something else that kept him intrigued, but he knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to be easy. Avery walked into the conference room with a steady, purposeful stride. She had come to the company to fix the problems Logan had asked her to, but she knew that her real challenge was going to be the resistance she'd face from people who didn't believe in her methods, or her for that matter. Logan was already seated at the head of the table, his arms crossed, eyes focused on a laptop screen. The rest of the team had gathered around, some of them whispering among themselves, others looking downright indifferent. Avery could feel the skepticism in the air. She had felt it ever since she stepped foot into this room, and she knew she was going to have to prove herself. "Good morning, everyone," Avery said, her voice calm and confident as she stepped up to the front. She made eye contact with a few of the employees, but she kept her attention on Logan. He was the one who needed convincing, not the others. "Today," she continued, "we're going to talk about something that's not always on your radar. Emotional intelligence. It's the ability to identify and manage your own emotions and the emotions of others." A few team members exchanged skeptical glances, clearly questioning the relevance of what she was saying. Logan's eyes flickered up from his laptop, but he didn't seem fully engaged. Avery knew it wasn't going to be easy, but she wasn't backing down. She grabbed a whiteboard marker and started writing key points: active listening, empathy, self-awareness. Then she turned to face them. Most people think communication is just about talking. It's not. It's about understanding. Her words were simple, but there was strength behind them. You might think you're communicating effectively, but if you're not truly listening, you're missing the point. The room went silent. Avery could sense the resistance in the air, and yet she pressed on. She wasn't here to play it safe. "I'm going to show you an exercise that will help you practice listening," she said. "It's simple. All I need is a volunteer." A few hands hesitantly went up. She nodded toward a young man named Trevor, one of the quieter members of the team. Trevor stood up, looking slightly unsure. "Okay, so what do we do?" "I'm going to give you a topic. You'll talk about it for 2 minutes, and the rest of the team's job is to listen. No interruptions, no feedback, just listen. At the end, I'll ask everyone to summarize what you said. Are you ready?" Trevor nodded, still unsure, but willing to play along. Avery glanced at Logan, who was watching her with mild curiosity. She could sense the walls he had built up, but she wasn't going to let that stop her. She turned her attention back to Trevor. "Your topic is, what motivates you at work?" Trevor took a deep breath and started speaking. "I guess it's the challenge, the sense of accomplishment when I solve problems. Also, the team dynamic, working together with others who are as passionate as I am, pushing each other to do better. It's about..." Avery watched the room carefully, noting the subtle body language shifts of the people in the room. Some seemed to be listening, while others clearly tuned out after the first few seconds. When Trevor finished, Avery asked everyone to summarize. "Okay, what did he say?" she asked, her tone calm yet commanding. There was a long silence. Finally, one of the more outspoken team members, Mark, piped up. "He said he likes working with people." Avery raised an eyebrow, nodding slowly. "Yes, but that's not the whole picture. Can anyone else summarize in a bit more detail?" Another person, Carla, hesitated. "He's motivated by challenges and working with a passionate team." Avery smiled. "That's closer. But still, you missed some key points. What Trevor didn't say directly, but what's there beneath the surface, is that he values growth, his own personal growth and the growth of his team. His passion comes from solving problems and being part of something bigger than himself." She looked at Trevor. "How did that feel? Did we listen?" Trevor smiled sheepishly. "Not really. I don't think anyone got the whole point." "That's the thing," Avery said, turning back to the group. "When we listen, we need to listen with intent. We need to hear what's not being said. If you can understand someone's motivations, their struggles, you can connect with them on a deeper level. And that, my friends, is the foundation of great communication." Logan raised his hand, surprising everyone. "I'll admit that was insightful, but it's just one exercise. Can this really translate into business results?" Avery met his gaze, calm but unwavering. "Yes, it can. Emotional intelligence is the foundation for everything. Leadership, teamwork, problem solving. If you want to be a successful company, you need to understand each other on a deeper level. When people feel understood, they perform better." The room was still. Avery could see that Logan was processing what she said, though he remained guarded. But that was fine. She wasn't here to impress him right away. She was here to change the way they worked together. "I know it's hard to grasp right away," Avery continued, "but give it time, one step at a time." As the session ended, Avery walked out of the room with her head held high. She could feel the subtle shift in the room, a change that was barely perceptible. But it was there. Logan had heard her. Now she just needed to make him believe. Avery sat at her desk, reviewing her notes from the last few training sessions. The team was still resistant, despite the small victories she had started to collect. She knew this was just the beginning, but the tension in the room was palpable. Every meeting felt like a battle. Logan was no different. His skepticism, though quieter now, still lingered like a cloud hanging over her efforts. She had expected resistance. It was, after all, a part of her job. But what she didn't anticipate was how deeply Logan's doubts would affect the team. His uncertainty trickled down to them, and every day it seemed like someone new questioned her methods. "Miss Holt, could we have a word?" It was Jason, Logan's right-hand man, the one person in the company who had openly opposed her methods from the start. His tone was polite, but Avery could tell there was something more behind his words. "Of course," she said, standing up and meeting his gaze with her usual calm composure. Jason closed the door behind them, leaning against the frame. "I just wanted to say," he started, hesitating slightly, "that I'm not sure this is the right approach for the company." Avery felt the weight of his words, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. "What exactly do you mean?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "The whole emotional intelligence thing," Jason continued, his arms crossed defensively. "It sounds like fluff. We're in the business of tech, numbers, results. If we can't fix things quickly, we fail. All this talk about listening and understanding, it's just not practical." Avery studied him, carefully choosing her next words. "I understand that you want results, Jason. So do I. But results don't come from just crunching numbers and pushing people harder. They come from building trust, fostering collaboration, things that can't be measured by KPIs but are equally crucial." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "Trust?" he scoffed. "That's something people say in motivational speeches. Trust doesn't get products to market faster." Avery took a deep breath, feeling the frustration rise, but she held it in check. "Trust is what makes teams work well together. Without it, you're just a group of individuals, not a team." Jason's expression hardened. "And how long do you expect to be working on trust while we're losing market share? At the end of the day, this is a business, not a therapy session." Avery looked at him, her eyes unwavering. "This isn't therapy, Jason. This is leadership. And leadership isn't just about pushing people. It's about understanding them, giving them the tools they need to succeed, not just as employees, but as people." Jason didn't respond immediately. Instead, he just shook his head and walked out, leaving Avery standing there with the heavy weight of his words hanging in the air. She had expected pushback, but something about his dismissiveness stung. Later that afternoon, Avery found herself sitting in Logan's office, waiting for him to finish a call. As she sat there, her mind raced through the conversation with Jason, wondering if it was a sign that things were spiraling. Was the resistance becoming too much? Was Logan losing faith in her? Logan hung up the phone and looked up, noticing her quiet demeanor. "Everything okay, Avery?" he asked, his tone neutral but with a hint of concern. She nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just dealing with some things." Logan studied her for a moment. "Jason gave you a hard time again, didn't he?" Avery didn't flinch. "He's not the only one. The team is still skeptical. They're not buying into the whole emotional intelligence thing." Logan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I won't lie to you. There are still a lot of people here who think the way you're going about this is unnecessary. But I trust you, Avery. I see what you're trying to do. It's just going to take time. You're going up against a lot of years of traditional management thinking." "Time," she echoed, frustration creeping into her voice. "How much time do I have, Logan? Because if this doesn't start showing results soon, I don't know how much longer I can keep fighting this fight." Logan's gaze softened, his stern business demeanor cracking for a moment. "I know it's hard, but you've got to give it a chance. We can't change everything overnight." She met his gaze, her tone quieter but firm. "I'm not trying to change everything, Logan. I'm trying to build something that lasts. And that's not going to happen if people keep resisting change." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "I get it, but it's not just about resistance from the team. There's a lot of pressure on all of us. The company's growth. Your methods are going to take time to sink in. But I'm still behind you, Avery. I just need you to hang in there." Avery felt a flicker of relief, but it was fleeting. She wasn't sure if Logan's support was enough to push through the increasing resistance. She knew she had to keep going, for herself and for the team. But the unspoken tensions in the room were growing harder to ignore. As she left Logan's office, the weight of the day pressed down on her. The tension with Jason, the doubt in the team's eyes, and the uncertainty in Logan's voice were like a cloud hanging over her every step. She had come to this company to make a difference. But sometimes, the hardest battles weren't fought in the boardroom. They were fought inside your own head. The morning had started like any other, but as the day wore on, the tension in the office was unbearable. Avery couldn't escape it. The subtle but persistent pushback from her team, the way they'd ignore her suggestions or undermine her efforts behind her back. It was clear to her now, this wasn't just about training or communication. It was about trust, or rather, the lack of it. Logan's words from earlier in the week echoed in her mind. Give it time. But how much time did she really have? Every moment felt like she was losing ground. Every attempt at bonding with the team, at gaining their trust, was met with indifference or even outright hostility. As Avery sat at her desk, reviewing the latest round of feedback from the team, her frustration bubbled over. She had spent days planning, tailoring her sessions to meet their needs, yet it felt like she was banging her head against a wall. None of it seemed to matter. A knock at the door broke her reverie. It was Logan standing in the doorway, his face strained. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of urgency. Avery stood, her mind already racing. "Sure, Logan. What's going on?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He didn't sit down, choosing instead to lean against the wall, his arms crossed. "It's the team. There's been a lot of pushback. Jason and some of the others are questioning your methods again. They're not sure it's working." Avery's stomach tightened. She had expected this, but hearing it from Logan still stung. "What are you saying, Logan?" He hesitated. "I'm saying that they're losing faith in you, and honestly, I'm starting to wonder if it's the right approach. Maybe we're going about this the wrong way." Her heart sank. Was he really questioning her now? After everything they had been through, she could feel the sting of betrayal start to creep in, but she fought it back. She had to stay strong for herself, for the team. "I've been working day and night on this, Logan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "trying to show them that there's a better way. I've been pushing myself harder than I ever have before, and this is what I get?" Logan took a step toward her. "I'm not saying it's your fault, Avery, but the results aren't there. We're losing ground, and I need to know if this is really the right way to go." Avery felt the weight of his words, and for a moment the room seemed to close in around her. It was like every ounce of energy had drained from her in that single moment. She had given everything, her time, her effort, her heart, and it still wasn't enough. "I thought you believed in me, Logan," she said, her voice cracking as she fought back tears. She hated how vulnerable she sounded, but she couldn't help it. "I thought you saw what I was trying to do." Logan looked away for a moment as if struggling with his own thoughts. "I do," he said softly, "but the company needs results, and we're not getting them. You're a part of the team, Avery, but I can't afford to let this go on if it's not working." Her chest tightened. The words hit harder than she expected. She had known there would be challenges, but this was a breaking point. "I don't know what else to say, Logan," she whispered. "I've tried everything." Logan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped forward and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm not giving up on you," he said quietly. "But I need you to show me that you can turn this around, that what you're doing will actually work." Avery's mind was spinning. She didn't know if she could take much more of this, but she also knew that walking away wasn't an option. Not yet. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, swallowing her emotions, "but I can't do this alone." Logan's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Avery saw the man who had first hired her, the one who had believed in her potential. He nodded slowly, his voice low. "I'll back you, but you need to show results. Now." As Logan left the room, Avery stood there for a long moment staring at the door. She had been given another chance, but how much longer would she have before everything fell apart? Her phone buzzed on her desk, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Melanie, one of the few people who seemed to truly understand what she was trying to do. "Hey, don't give up. You've got this. I believe in you." Avery read the message, the words a small comfort in the midst of the chaos. She wasn't alone. But even so, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Avery sat at her desk, her fingers tapping nervously on the edge of her laptop. The morning meeting with Logan had left her feeling hollow. She had poured everything into this job, believing in her methods, but every day it seemed like the team was slipping further away from her. She had the support of a few individuals, but not enough to turn the tide. The pressure was mounting, and Avery knew it was only a matter of time before she would be forced to accept the harsh reality that her efforts might not be enough. The thought made her stomach churn, but she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Melanie. "Don't let them get to you. You're doing great. I believe in you." Avery read the message twice. It was a small comfort, but in that moment, it felt like a lifeline. Melanie had been one of the few who had supported her from the beginning, who had seen her potential when others had written her off. But the rest of the team? The rest of the team was a different story. They were skeptical, dismissive, and some were downright hostile. She put her phone down and sighed, wondering how long she could keep fighting this battle alone. There had to be a way to win them over, but how? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Come in," Avery called, not looking up. She assumed it was another colleague with a question or a request. But when she heard the door open, she was surprised to see Jason standing in the doorway. He hesitated for a moment before speaking, his usual confident demeanor replaced with something a little less certain. "Avery," he began, "can we talk?" Avery looked up, her heart skipping a beat. The last time they'd spoken, it hadn't ended well. She had expected him to continue pushing against her methods, but now, seeing him here, she wasn't sure what to expect. "Of course," she said cautiously, trying to gauge his tone. Jason walked in slowly, his hands in his pockets. "I know we've had our differences," he started, "and I haven't exactly been the biggest fan of your approach." Avery's stomach tightened. She wasn't sure where this conversation was going, but she braced herself for more criticism. "But," he continued, his voice softening, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day, about trust and about emotional intelligence." Avery's brow furrowed in confusion. Was Jason actually reconsidering his position? "I still don't fully agree with everything," Jason admitted, "but I see now that there's something to it. Your methods, they're different, and yeah, they take time, but I think they're worth a shot." Avery blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. Jason had been one of her fiercest critics, and now out of nowhere he was offering her support. She didn't know whether to be suspicious or relieved. "You're saying you're on my side?" Avery asked, her voice tentative. Jason nodded, his usual bravado replaced by something a little more vulnerable. "Yeah, I've been a bit of a jerk, and honestly, I think I've been more resistant to change than I should have been. So, I'm sorry. If you need anything, just let me know." Avery took a moment to process his words. She had never expected an apology from Jason, let alone his support. She had always thought he saw her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in the fast-paced world of tech startups. But now, something was shifting. "Thank you," she said quietly, the weight of the moment sinking in. "I appreciate that, Jason, really." He offered a small smile. "No problem. I'll try to get the team on board too. But you have to keep showing us that it works. We need results." Avery nodded. "I know, and I will. I just need a little more time." Jason gave her a nod of understanding. "You've got it. Just keep pushing. I'm with you." As Jason left her office, Avery sat there for a moment, her heart still racing. She had expected to be let down again, but instead, she had received something she hadn't anticipated: genuine support from someone who had always doubted her. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. For the first time in days, Avery felt a flicker of hope. If Jason could change his mind, maybe the rest of the team could too. Maybe Logan could too. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. The office felt colder than usual as Avery sat at her desk. The soft hum of the computer the only sound in the room. Her mind replayed the conversation with Jason earlier, his unexpected support still lingering in her thoughts. Despite his change of heart, the pressure was far from over. Logan's doubts still hung in the air, and the team's resistance was palpable. She needed something more, something that would push her over the edge and prove that she wasn't just another outsider in a world that didn't want her. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was Logan. "Can we meet in my office in an hour?" Avery hesitated before responding, her fingers hovering over the screen. What now? She didn't have the energy for another round of criticism, but she knew she couldn't back down. With a deep breath, she typed, "Of course, see you soon." When the hour arrived, Avery made her way to Logan's office. The door was slightly ajar and she knocked before entering, her heart pounding. Logan sat behind his desk staring at his computer, but when he saw her, he gestured for her to sit. "Thanks for coming," Logan said, his tone softer than usual. He looked tired, his usual sharp edge replaced with an exhaustion Avery hadn't noticed before. "I've been thinking." Avery took a seat across from him, trying to read his expression. "About what?" Logan hesitated, eyes flicking toward the window. "About you, and everything that's been going on here." He paused. "Avery, I need to apologize." Avery's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "I've been hard on you," Logan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've questioned your methods without truly understanding them. I was so focused on results and the bottom line that I lost sight of the bigger picture, and that's on me." Avery couldn't believe what she was hearing. This wasn't the Logan she had known, a man so determined to succeed at all costs, so sure of himself. This Logan sitting here now was different. He was vulnerable, open in a way she hadn't expected. "I'm sorry too," Avery said quietly, her voice tinged with both frustration and relief. "I've been pushing, trying to make a difference, but it feels like no one's listening. The team is divided, and I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this if nothing changes." Logan leaned forward, meeting her gaze. "That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. I've been listening, Avery, and I think I understand now. What you're trying to do isn't easy. And it's not just about improving communication. It's about transforming the entire culture of this company." "I wasn't seeing that before." Avery blinked, her throat tightening. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I believe in you. I've seen the change in people who've worked with you. They may not fully realize it yet, but you're doing something that matters. It's just going to take time." Avery exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of his words settle over her like a warm blanket. She had fought so hard to prove herself, to make them understand that change wasn't instant, that trust couldn't be built overnight. And now, finally, Logan understood. But then there was something else. Something Logan wasn't saying. She could feel it. There was a moment of silence between them, thick with unspoken truths. Finally, Logan broke it. "There's more," he said, leaning back in his chair, his fingers tapping nervously on the desk. "I need to tell you something I've never told anyone." Avery's heart skipped. She had never seen Logan like this open, this raw. "What is it?" Logan stared at his hands, his voice growing quieter. "I didn't just hire you because you had the right qualifications. I hired you because I needed someone to remind me of what really matters." Avery frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" He met her gaze again, his eyes full of a vulnerability she hadn't expected. "I've been running this company for years, but after my wife died, I didn't know how to keep going. I threw myself into the business thinking that work would distract me, but it hasn't. And I've been avoiding the truth. I've been pushing everyone away, especially the people closest to me. I thought I could fix things by fixing the company, but that's not how this works." The room was silent. Avery's mind raced. She had heard rumors about Logan's past, about his late wife, but hearing him speak about it so openly, so painfully, it struck her to the core. She didn't know what to say. "I hired you because I saw something in you, something I lost a long time ago. You're not just here to fix the team. You're here to remind me of why I started this in the first place, to build something meaningful. I forgot that along the way." Logan's voice broke slightly. But he cleared his throat and looked at her again, his expression steady. I need you, Avery. The team needs you. We need someone who can teach us to care about each other again. Avery sat there stunned. She had come to this company to change lives, to bring about transformation. But she hadn't expected to hear this. To be reminded that even the strongest leaders had their breaking points. The revelation hit her like a wave. Logan had been hiding his pain behind the facade of control. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a man struggling to keep it all together. And she was the person who could help him, not just with the company, but with his heart. She nodded slowly. I understand now. I'm here to help. But we can't do this alone. It's going to take all of us. Logan looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. I'm counting on you, Avery. And for the first time, Avery truly felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Avery's eyes flicked nervously over the team's latest project update. She had spent the last week working closely with them, trying to implement the changes she knew would bring about progress. But something wasn't right. The numbers weren't adding up, and key information that should have been readily available had gone missing. Her stomach churned as she went over the figures again. One of the figures was completely off, too far off to be an honest mistake. She stared at the screen for a long moment, the weight of the realization sinking in. Someone was sabotaging her work. Avery's first instinct was to confront Logan. She walked over to his office, her steps quick and heavy with urgency. She didn't knock this time. Instead, she opened the door and walked straight in. Logan was on the phone, but when he saw her, he waved his hand for her to come in. I'll be right with you, he said into the receiver, his voice clipped. Avery didn't wait. She closed the door behind her and paced for a moment, trying to collect her thoughts before she spoke. Logan, we have a problem, she said, her voice tight with frustration. Someone in this company is sabotaging the project. Logan's gaze sharpened as he set the phone down. What do you mean, sabotaging? I've been looking at the data, she continued, pointing to her tablet, and it's been altered. The information we need to finalize the pitch, it's gone. And the numbers? They don't match up with the original projections. Logan stood up from his desk, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. Are you sure? Could it be a mistake? Avery didn't hesitate. No, this is deliberate. Someone's been deleting files, manipulating data. She took a deep breath. And I have a feeling I know who's behind it. Logan frowned. Who? Jason, she said quietly, her heart pounding in her chest. I've noticed his behavior lately, his reluctance to support my methods, the way he's been so quick to criticize every change I've made. And now this? It's too much of a coincidence. Logan's face tightened. You're sure? Avery met his gaze, her jaw set. I'm not accusing him without reason, but I've been watching him, and I'm certain. Logan stood still for a moment, his eyes narrowing in thought. Then he nodded, his expression hardening. If this is true, we need to confront him, but we need evidence, Avery. We can't act on suspicion alone. Avery felt her frustration rising. I'm telling you, Logan, we don't have time for evidence. The project is already behind. If we don't act now, it'll be too late. Logan met her gaze, and for a moment, there was an understanding between them. I know, he said, his voice low, but we have to be smart about this. Let's gather more information before we make any moves. Avery nodded, her mind racing. She knew that Logan was right, but the feeling of betrayal was hard to shake. The very person she had tried so hard to work with was now the one threatening everything she had fought for. The next day, Avery sat with her team, going over the project again, looking for anything that could lead her to the truth. It didn't take long before she found what she was looking for, an email exchange between Jason and an outside contractor. The subject line was innocuous enough, but when Avery opened the message, her stomach dropped. It was a conversation discussing how they could adjust the project figures to ensure that certain people on the team were blamed for delays. The email was signed with Jason's name. Avery's blood ran cold. She knew now. It wasn't just sabotage. It was a calculated effort to discredit her and make her look like the one who couldn't handle the pressure. She immediately went to Logan's office, her heart pounding in her chest. When she entered, Logan was reviewing documents, but he looked up at her as soon as she walked in. "I've got the proof," Avery said, holding out her tablet. "I found the email exchange between Jason and the contractor. He's been manipulating the numbers and trying to make me the scapegoat for the failure." Logan's expression darkened as he took the tablet from her, his eyes scanning the screen. He didn't speak for a long time, just staring at the evidence. Finally, he looked up at Avery, his jaw clenched. This is bad, Avery. If this gets out, it'll destroy the company." Avery felt a surge of anger, but she kept her voice steady. "It's worse than that, Logan. Jason's been undermining me at every turn, trying to sabotage everything I've been doing. And now he's going to try to destroy the project, and me, if we don't stop him." Logan looked back at the tablet, his mind clearly racing. "I'll take care of this," he said quietly. "We'll handle it. But we can't let him know we've found out. We need to be careful about how we proceed." Avery nodded, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. She had suspected Jason for weeks, but now she had the evidence to back it up. The betrayal stung, but she wasn't going to let it derail everything she had worked so hard to build. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. The air in Logan's office felt thicker than ever as Avery sat across from him, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Jason's betrayal had shaken her confidence, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it. Not now. The project was on the brink of collapse, and if they didn't act quickly, everything would fall apart. Logan was leaning back in his chair, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. He had been silent for a long time after they had confronted Jason, as if weighing the gravity of the situation. Avery could see it in his eyes. He knew how much was at stake. "I'm not going to lie to you, Avery," Logan finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "This is a mess. Jason's actions, they could ruin everything we've been working for. And it's not just about the project now, it's about the reputation of this company. People are going to find out." Avery nodded. She knew that. She had been trying to keep everything contained, but Logan was right. If they didn't act decisively, the damage would be too great to repair. "Then what do we do?" she asked, her voice strained with the pressure. "We can't just let him get away with this." Logan looked at her, his eyes narrowing. "We could fire him, make an example out of him, but that would cause more disruption. The team's already fractured. The last thing we need is a public scandal. We need a solution that's bold, one that's going to show everyone that we're not backing down." Avery felt her chest tighten as she thought through their options. She could feel the weight of Logan's words, the urgency in his voice. This wasn't just a matter of winning or losing. It was about proving that their efforts weren't futile, that they could rise above the chaos. "I say we confront him," Avery said, her voice steady now. "But we do it in a way that shows the team we're united. We don't need to destroy him, but we need to expose what he's done. If we do it right, we'll come out stronger, and the team will see that they can trust us to lead them through this." Logan stared at her for a moment, as if contemplating her suggestion. Then slowly, he nodded. "You're right. We can't let him think he's won. It's time we made a stand." Avery felt a surge of determination. She wasn't going to let Jason, let alone anyone, undermine the progress she had worked so hard to build. She had put everything into this company, and she wasn't about to let a traitor take it all down. "I'll handle it," she said. "I know how to approach him. I'll make sure we get the truth without destroying him completely." Logan's eyes softened. "I'm glad you're on board with this, Avery. I trust you to handle it. We've come a long way, and we can't let this set us back. Do what you need to do, but make it count." Avery nodded. She could feel the weight of the responsibility settling over her, but there was no turning back now. It was time to take control, to show everyone, including Jason, that she was a force to be reckoned with. Later that afternoon, Avery walked into Jason's office. He was sitting at his desk, scrolling through emails, unaware of her presence. She stood there for a moment, gathering her thoughts, then walked over and closed the door behind her. Jason looked up, his face a mixture of surprise and wariness. "Avery," he said, trying to mask his discomfort. "What's going on?" "We need to talk," Avery said, her tone calm but firm. I know what you've been doing. Jason's eyes flickered with panic, but he quickly masked it with a forced smile. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Avery stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. I know you've been manipulating the numbers, sabotaging the project. I've seen the emails, Jason, and I'm not going to let you destroy everything we've worked for. Jason's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to say something but seemed to lose his words. I didn't. You did, Avery interrupted, her voice quiet but sharp. You've been working behind the scenes, trying to make me look bad, but now you have two choices. You can either admit what you've done and take responsibility, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been up to. Jason swallowed hard, his face contorting with emotion. You don't understand, he said, his voice shaking. I had to do it. I was trying to protect the company, protect us all. You've been changing everything too fast. People were losing faith in you. Avery's heart clenched. She had expected this, but hearing it from him still hurt. You didn't protect anyone, Jason. You sabotaged us all, and now you're going to face the consequences. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Jason looked like he wanted to argue, to deny it all, but there was nothing left to say. The truth was out, and the damage was done. Avery's voice softened. I'm not here to destroy you, Jason, but you need to understand that this is bigger than your ego, bigger than your fear. We're a team, and that's what I'm trying to build. Jason's expression softened, his shoulders slumping. I'm sorry, he whispered, almost too quietly for her to hear. Avery took a deep breath. I don't want to hear excuses, just fix it, help us rebuild. As Avery left his office, she felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. It had been bold, but it had been necessary. Now it was up to Jason to decide if he would continue to sabotage the team or step up and become part of the solution. Whatever happened next, Avery knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even someone inside the company, tear it down. Avery sat at her desk, her fingers drumming nervously on the surface. She had expected resistance, but the events of the past week felt like a constant storm battering her from all sides. Jason's betrayal had shaken the foundation she had been trying to build, and though Logan had stood by her, the team was still fractured. The pressure was mounting, and the final presentation to the client was only days away. She glanced at the clock. It was almost time for the final team meeting before the presentation, and Avery knew that the next few hours would be crucial. She had one chance to turn things around and show the team, and Logan, that her approach wasn't just a set of lofty ideals. It had to be proven with results. The team filed into the conference room, and Avery could feel the weight of their eyes on her. The tension was thick, like the air before a storm. Everyone was waiting for her to make the first move, to offer something that could bring them together, to inspire some kind of unity that had been sorely missing. Logan was already at the front, his usual confident stance tempered with the uncertainty he'd been carrying ever since the sabotage. He gave Avery a nod of acknowledgement as she stepped into the room, and she could see that he was as unsure as she was about how to handle the growing tension. She took a deep breath and turned to face the team. I know we've had our struggles, she began, her voice steady but firm. I know we've had setbacks, and some of you may still be questioning the direction we're going in. But we're at a crossroads. We have a choice to make. We can continue to let the past dictate our future, or we can step up, trust each other, and prove that we are stronger than the challenges we face. She paused, scanning the room, her gaze landing on each member of the team. Jason was sitting toward the back, his expression unreadable. He hadn't spoken much since their confrontation, and Avery wasn't sure if he was ready to truly participate in the rebuilding process. I'm not here to talk about theories or idealistic goals, she continued. I'm here to show you that what we're doing is not just about emotional intelligence or trust. It's about achieving results. We're facing a high-stakes situation, and it's time to put everything we've been learning into action. She turned to the whiteboard and wrote out a few key points: collaboration, innovation, accountability. Here's the plan, she said. We have one final push to make before the presentation. We need everyone to contribute their best work, and we need to trust that each person is doing their part. I'm not asking for perfection, but I'm asking for effort. Every single one of us needs to show up. Logan stood next to her, his arms crossed, watching the room carefully. Avery could sense that this was his way of showing solidarity, even though she knew he was still grappling with his doubts. She had to make this work, for the team, for the company, and for herself. "We have to be honest about where we stand," she continued. "I know we've had setbacks, and I know some of you feel like this isn't working, but we can't change anything if we don't take responsibility for our actions. That's why I'm asking you all to step up, to take accountability for your part in this, whether it's the good or the bad. We need to move forward, not backward." She could see the skepticism in some faces, but there was also something else, a flicker of understanding, of a willingness to try. Maybe it was because the stakes were too high to ignore any longer. Maybe they were starting to see what she had been trying to build. Avery turned to face Logan again. "We've all been through a lot, personally and professionally, but we can't afford to let that divide us. We need to come together, work together, and deliver something that proves we're capable of more." Logan finally spoke, his voice cutting through the silence. "Avery's right. We've come a long way, but the hard part is ahead of us. We've been given a second chance, and we have to make it count. We're going to fight for this, but we need everyone to give their all." Avery watched as the team slowly began to nod, some more hesitantly than others. Jason's face remained impassive, but Avery could feel a subtle shift in the room. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "This is it," she said, her voice firm but encouraging. "We either come together or we fail together. The choice is ours. Let's make it count." As the meeting came to a close, Avery felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The team was still fractured, but there was a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could pull this off. But the storm wasn't over yet. The real test would come when they faced the client. Logan's hand on her shoulder as they walked out of the conference room was a small comfort. "You did well in there," he said quietly. "We're not out of the woods yet, but we're closer." Avery nodded, her resolve strengthening. She had fought for this team, and she wasn't going to give up now. They had one final chance, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. Avery sat at her desk, the hum of the office barely breaking through the chaos in her mind. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of challenges and setbacks, but she had pushed through, determined to prove herself. The team had come together, barely, but now the project's final presentation loomed, and the pressure was unbearable. Yet as she looked over her notes, she realized that there was something deeper than just the work that needed fixing. It was time for a different kind of conversation. She closed her laptop and stood up, her eyes catching Logan's as he passed by. He had been more distant recently, perhaps feeling the weight of everything he had put on her shoulders. Avery had noticed the change in him, the same burdened look that had first drawn her to his office all those weeks ago. But now, she knew that the walls between them had grown too high. "Logan, can we talk?" she asked, her voice steady, but there was a vulnerability to it that made him pause. Logan stopped, his usual confident demeanor slipping just for a moment as he looked at her. "Of course. What's on your mind?" He motioned to his office, and Avery followed him inside, the door closing softly behind them. The air in the room felt heavier than usual, like it carried the weight of all the unspoken things they hadn't addressed. Avery took a deep breath. "I know I've been pushing," she began, her voice a little softer than she intended. "Pushing to make things work, pushing the team, pushing myself, but I've been thinking, maybe I've been doing it all wrong." Logan's brows furrowed, and he crossed his arms, listening intently. "What do you mean?" Avery hesitated, but the words came more easily than she expected. "I've been so focused on results, on proving myself, that I've forgotten why I'm really here. And I think maybe I've been so caught up in trying to fix things that I've lost sight of what really matters." Logan stepped closer, his expression softening. "What do you mean by that?" "I've been so focused on fixing the team, getting the numbers right, making everything perfect, that I've ignored the fact that we're all human," she said, her voice quiet now. "I've been trying to lead with logic, with data, but I forgot about the emotions that come with it, the trust we need to build, the connections we need to have with each other. I've been thinking too much about what's outside of us instead of what's inside." Logan didn't interrupt, but she could feel him processing what she was saying. Avery's heart was racing, but she kept going. Maybe I've been trying to be perfect because I don't know how to be vulnerable. I don't know how to ask for help when I need it. I don't know how to let myself be seen. And I've been so afraid of failing that I forgot how to be real with you, with the team, and with myself. Logan stood still for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. Avery could feel the rawness of the confession in the air, and she wasn't sure if she was relieved or terrified by what she had just admitted. Finally, Logan spoke, his voice quiet but sincere. Avery, I had no idea you felt that way. I've seen how hard you've worked. But maybe I've been so focused on results that I've missed the bigger picture too. We both have. We've been pushing so hard to get it all right that we've forgotten how to let ourselves fail, how to let ourselves be human. Avery's eyes met his, and for the first time she felt a shift. Acknowledging their vulnerability was the first step toward building something stronger, something real. Logan wasn't the impenetrable CEO she had once thought him to be. He was human too. I've been afraid, Logan, Avery continued, her voice shaking slightly. Afraid of not being enough, afraid of failing, afraid that if I didn't have all the answers, I'd lose everything. Logan took a step closer, and for the first time since their partnership had begun, he seemed to let his guard down. We're both afraid, but that's what makes us human. We don't have to have all the answers, Avery. We just have to be willing to face it together. The weight of his words hung in the air between them, and Avery felt a sudden sense of relief, like a burden had been lifted from her chest. She had never expected this conversation to turn so raw, so honest, but it was exactly what they both needed. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that, Avery said, her voice barely a whisper. Logan nodded, his gaze steady. I didn't realize how much I needed to say it. There was a moment of silence, a quiet understanding passing between them. It wasn't about fixing everything in an instant. It was about acknowledging their flaws, their fears, and their humanity. They didn't have to be perfect. They just had to be willing to try, to grow together, and to trust that they could overcome whatever came next. Finally, Avery let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Thank you, Logan. Logan gave a small smile, something warmer than he had shown in weeks. We're in this together, Avery. Always have been. Let's just take it one step at a time. Avery felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. Maybe they weren't out of the woods yet, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like they had a chance. The day of the presentation had arrived, and the weight of the moment pressed down on Avery like never before. She stood at the back of the conference room, watching her team settle into their seats, their expressions a mix of anticipation and nerves. They had come so far, overcoming sabotage, doubt, and betrayal. But today would be the ultimate test. Avery had one chance to prove that everything they had fought for was worth it. Logan entered the room, his usual confidence now tempered with the quiet understanding that things were still fragile. He gave Avery a brief nod before taking his place at the head of the table, the clients filing in behind him. The room felt charged, the air thick with expectation. The stakes were higher than ever. Avery's heart raced, but she steadied herself. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about redemption. For herself, for the team, and for everything they had worked toward. It was time to show the world that they had the strength to rebuild, to rise above the chaos. She took a deep breath as Logan began to speak, introducing the presentation and setting the stage for what they were about to unveil. It wasn't just a pitch. It was a reflection of everything they had endured. It was their vision, one that hadn't been handed to them on a silver platter, but had been earned through hard work, determination, and trust. As the presentation began, Avery could feel the energy in the room shift. The team had come together, each member now fully invested in the success of the project. Jason, who had once been her biggest adversary, sat beside her, his expression focused and serious. He had done his part, redeeming himself in the eyes of the team and perhaps in his own eyes as well. His silent support spoke volumes. The room fell into a hush as the final part of the presentation began. Avery stood, her hands steady as she clicked through the slides. She spoke clearly, confidently, her voice carrying the weight of everything they had accomplished together. She didn't focus on the data alone. She spoke of the journey, of how far they had come from the doubt and division they had once faced. "This project represents more than just numbers on a page," Avery said, her gaze sweeping over the room, making sure to lock eyes with Logan. "It represents the strength of a team that refused to give up. It represents our willingness to fight for something better. We've been through the storm, but now we stand here, stronger than ever." As she spoke, she saw the clients nodding, their faces softening with each word. This wasn't just another sales pitch. This was real, and they could see it. Avery could feel the shift in the room, the shift in the energy that had once been filled with skepticism and distrust. Now there was belief. There was hope. She finished her part of the presentation with a final statement that felt more like a promise. "This project is just the beginning. The foundation we've built together, on trust, on collaboration, will carry us forward, and together we will achieve more than any of us imagined." There was a long silence after her words, and for a moment, Avery feared it was too late, that the damage couldn't be undone. But then, one of the clients stood up, clapping slowly, a broad smile spreading across his face. Slowly, others joined in, the applause growing louder until it filled the room. Avery blinked, taken aback by the response. She had expected them to be impressed, but this was beyond anything she could have hoped for. Logan stood beside her, a proud smile on his face as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly, but there was no mistaking the pride in his voice. Avery could hardly believe it. After everything, the sabotage, the doubts, the betrayals, they had done it. They had proven to themselves and to everyone else that they could rise above it all. As the applause died down, the clients exchanged glances, and the lead client stepped forward. "We're impressed," he said with a firm handshake to both Avery and Logan. "You've not only delivered a great product, but you've also shown us that you have the resilience and leadership to back it up. We're on board." A wave of relief washed over Avery, her shoulders sagging as she let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. They had won. Not just the contract, but their place as a team. They had proved that trust, collaboration, and vulnerability were more than just buzzwords. They were the foundation of true success. As the clients left, Logan turned to her, his expression softened by pride and something deeper, something unspoken. "You did it, Avery. You turned this whole thing around." She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. "We did it, Logan. We're a team." Later that evening, as the team gathered for a celebratory dinner, Avery sat back and watched the conversations unfold around her. It wasn't just about the deal they had closed. It was about something bigger. It was about the bond they had formed, the way they had come together and triumphed in the face of adversity. As Logan raised his glass to toast their success, Avery's heart swelled with gratitude. They had all been through so much, but now they were stronger because of it. And as they celebrated, Avery knew that this was only the beginning. The day had finally come. The culmination of months of hard work, doubt, betrayal, and eventual redemption rested in Avery's hands. The client meeting was scheduled in just a few hours, and the weight of the moment pressed heavily on her shoulders. The success of the project, her reputation, the team's trust, it all hinged on what happened next. Avery stood in front of the mirror in the small conference room, adjusting her blazer one last time. She didn't need to look perfect, but she needed to be focused. The team had rallied behind her, the trust they had built over the last few weeks finally paying off. Jason had redeemed himself, and even Melanie, who had once been hesitant, was now fully on board. They were all in this together. She turned away from the mirror, walking toward the door. Logan was already inside the main conference room, greeting the clients. His usual confident demeanor had returned, though Avery noticed a small tension in his posture that mirrored her own. He was as ready as she was, but neither of them could shake the gravity of the situation. As she stepped into the room, Logan gave her a brief, reassuring smile. "You ready?" Avery nodded. "Ready as I'll ever be." The clients, an influential tech firm looking to partner with them, were seated at the table, their expressions unreadable. The lead client, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s, looked up at her and gave a small nod. Avery, Logan, we've been reviewing your proposal, and I have to say we're impressed, but we need more. We need to know that what you're offering is truly sustainable, that this is not just a short-term solution. The pressure mounted again. Avery took a deep breath and walked to the front, the words she'd rehearsed in her mind ready to spill out. I understand your concerns, she said, her voice steady but firm. But what you're looking for is not just another quick fix. This project, this team, is built on something deeper: trust, collaboration, and a willingness to adapt. We've faced challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but we've built something that is going to last. We're not just offering you a product, we're offering you a partnership. She could see the clients listening, their expressions shifting ever so slightly. Avery glanced at Logan, who was watching her closely. He gave her a subtle nod of encouragement, his eyes filled with belief. She was on the right path. This project is not about creating something flawless, Avery continued, her confidence growing with every word. It's about creating something resilient, something that can evolve with the challenges ahead. We've built a team that is committed to constant improvement. Our success isn't defined by one pitch or one contract. It's defined by the relationships we've built and the trust we've earned. The room was silent for a moment, and Avery held her breath. The tension was palpable, but she refused to let it break her. She had worked too hard to get here. Finally, the lead client spoke, his voice steady but impressed. You've convinced me. We believe in what you're doing here, Avery Logan. We're ready to move forward. Avery felt the relief wash over her like a wave, but she couldn't let herself become complacent. She had to finish strong. Thank you, she said, her voice strong yet tinged with gratitude. We won't let you down. This partnership means more to us than just a business deal. It's an opportunity to prove that we can create something lasting together. As the client stood to shake hands, Logan's eyes met hers. There was no need for words, just a shared understanding of how far they had come and how much they had achieved. Avery felt a sense of pride that she hadn't expected. The project was no longer just about results. It was about the journey they had all taken together. As the meeting wrapped up, the clients left with smiles and handshakes, and Avery stood with Logan, feeling the weight of the moment slowly dissipate. They had done it. They had not only won the deal, but had proven that trust, vulnerability, and resilience were the keys to success. Logan turned to her, a genuine smile on his face. I knew you had it in you. Avery smiled back, feeling the exhaustion settle into her bones. We had it in all of us. Later that evening, as she sat in the quiet of her office, Avery thought back on everything they had been through. The sabotage, the struggles, the late nights, the doubt. It had all led to this moment, and now the future was full of promise. She had faced her fears, had embraced vulnerability, and had learned to trust herself and others in a way she never had before. The journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt and fear. But for the first time, Avery knew she was ready to face them. This was just the beginning. The morning after the meeting, Avery stood by the window in her office, looking out over the city. The relief from yesterday's success still lingered in her chest, but there was something else, something new. She had expected the rush of victory to be fleeting, but it felt different this time. It wasn't just about securing the deal or proving herself to Logan, the team, or even the clients. It was about realizing that this journey had changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had faced the storm, navigated the betrayals, and come out on the other side stronger. But now she saw a new horizon, a chance to build something sustainable, something real. A knock on the door broke her reverie. She turned smiling as Logan walked in, a mug of coffee in hand. You're up early, he said, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Avery chuckled, the sound feeling lighter than it had in a long time. I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about everything that happened and, well, everything that's still ahead. Logan leaned against the doorframe, taking a sip of his coffee. I know the feeling. Yesterday was a big win, but it's not the end, is it? Avery met his gaze, the unspoken understanding between them clear. No, it's just the beginning. There was a moment of silence, Then Logan set his coffee down on her desk and crossed the room to stand next to her by the window. "You've come a long way, Avery. So has the team. I know we've been through a lot, but what you've done here, it's more than just business. It's about who we've become, together." Avery looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, without the team. We all pulled through, and we didn't just fix the problems, we built something new." Logan nodded. "It's not easy, but we've built trust, and that's the foundation for everything." As she stood there with him, Avery realized that the hardest part wasn't behind her. The real work, the work that would define their future, was just beginning. She and Logan both knew that success wasn't guaranteed. It wasn't enough to just prove themselves once. They had to keep proving it, day after day. But this time, she felt ready. Her phone buzzed on the desk, breaking the moment. Avery picked it up, and when she saw the text from Jason, her heart skipped. "Avery, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me a chance to make things right. I won't let you down again." Her fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before she typed back, "You've already proven yourself. Let's keep moving forward together." She set the phone down and turned back to Logan. "I think we've got a good team, a team that understands what it takes to make it." Logan smiled, his eyes reflecting the pride he had always kept carefully hidden. "I'm starting to believe that too." The rest of the day flew by in a blur of meetings and follow-ups. But as the evening approached, Avery found herself standing outside the office looking up at the city. The lights were just beginning to flicker on, casting a soft glow across the skyline. It felt like a fresh start, a promise that whatever challenges came next, she wasn't facing them alone. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from Melanie. "I know we've had our ups and downs, but I just wanted to say, this team is better because of you. I'm glad we're on the same side." A smile tugged at Avery's lips. The support from her team, from the people who had once doubted her, now felt like the foundation for something bigger than just business. It was about growth, both professionally and personally, and she had learned that when people came together, anything was possible. As she locked the door to her office, Avery took a deep breath and looked back at the space she had spent countless hours in. It was no longer just a place of stress or pressure. It had become a symbol of what they had achieved, what they would continue to build together. Later that evening, Logan called her as she sat in her apartment, taking a rare moment to relax. "We did it, Avery," he said, his voice filled with something like quiet triumph. "We've earned this." Avery smiled, feeling a weight she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying begin to lift. "Yes, we have, and we'll keep earning it." The future was full of uncertainty, but for the first time in a long time, Avery wasn't afraid. She knew she was capable of facing whatever came next, not because she had all the answers, but because she had built something solid with people who trusted her, people who believed in her. The beginning was just the start. The real work lay ahead, but now, more than ever, she was ready to face it head on.